This is an 8-iron, and it's a dead shank.
Wow.
Way right.
Oh, takes a hop
shank.
off the path.
You gotta be kidding me. Very tough pitch shot right here. You gotta hit it into the hill, one hop up and bite, and it's in.
Kind of like that.
Hey everyone, it's Jason at the Sub 70 Podcast. I'm really excited for you guys to listen to this podcast. We have on Andre Metzger, who has been tearing up the mini tours the last 5 or 6 years with some incredibly good golf. Don't be surprised next year if you see him on the Korn Ferry Tour, and I wouldn't be surprised the next couple of years if he's on the PGA Tour. It's a really interesting backstory, a lot of perseverance, and he's played a lot of great golf. I really enjoyed talking to him, and I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. Thanks again for listening. I would like to welcome to the Sub 70 Podcast the winner of 26 professional events, Andre Metzger. Andre, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on today. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I really appreciate it too. This is my first podcast.
Well, it should be fun. I've been wanting to do this podcast, on the developmental tours and the mini tours and that whole kind of scene, and was asking Ryan over at the Monday Q Info, which is on Twitter. It's great for kind of all of the tours around the world and Monday qualifying and Q School and all that information. So if people are out there interested in it, it's like the best site. So I asked Ryan, if I was going to get one guy on the podcast that has just been kicking the crap out of it, in the last 6 years and playing great golf, who would you get? And your name came up. So I've been looking forward to this one for a while and, getting a hold of you and kind of thinking about this. So I'm excited to do this. It's going to be really interesting. I think there's a lot to talk about. My first question is, how have you played that well for that extended a period of time to get that many wins? Because we would always like to be like, what can we do for our games and whatever level we're at to maintain as good as we can be at? What have you, looking back, what have you done to win that much?
Well, I honestly, in the first place, you got to fail a lot, and you got to learn a lot of lessons from that. A lot of guys come up to me, they think that I've been, just winning forever. And honestly, I tell a lot of the younger guys, they'll be 27, they're all bummed out that they haven't won. And I'm like, man, I didn't have my first win until I was 30. And, so I had a lot of learning curves. I didn't take professional golf super serious to begin. I came out to Arizona. My wife, we came out here for her to play professionally, and she's a great golfer in her own way. And then I was just caddying out here during the winters, and then all of a sudden I'd play during the summers. And, I kind of just gradually kept getting better. Whoever was considered the best, that's who I was trying to play with or play against. I really enjoy challenges. And so honestly, the way I see, how I've gotten to here is, I just basically failed a lot, but never gave up, never gave in to, the bad thoughts that we all have, and just kept fighting and kept getting better. And the second you learn whatever that is that you're looking for to make your game better, man, that's when you just start catapulting forward. Golf became fairly easy for me, I would say. A lot of young guys try and make golf really hard, and they talk about it that it's really hard. And a lot of my message that I tell those guys is, listen, you got to start convincing yourself that golf is easy, because when you're doing it at your best and when things are right, it does become easy. I've never shot a hard 62, when things are right, when you're playing good, golf kind of comes easy. I know that's could tick some people off, but it can be that simple in the sense of just the way you talk and the way you approach, getting better. maybe your levels to break par. And so you got to make it easy for yourself to break par. You know, that 71 or 70 that you shoot for the first time, it's going to, when you look back, it's going to be like, oh, well, that was pretty easy, you know? So I think there's something there. That's what I would kind of say as far as how I have kind of gotten to where I'm at.
So it sounds like it's more of a mental, I mean, physically it sounds like you always had the tools to do it. Is it just more of a mindset or a mental thing that you kind of, once you hit 30 and that maturity kind of came there, that between self-belief and your abilities are there and it just kind of all came together, and then once it kind of happened, winning breeds winning? Is that sort of a fair assessment of me kind of looking at it, where it wasn't like all of a sudden you got to be a better driver of the golf ball? It just all,
exactly.
It just sort of all came together with a lot of self-belief.
Yeah, I would say that'd be a perfect assessment. You know, I to a degree, you know, when you're like, say you're trying to learn how to bowl, you know, first you got to learn the form. You do it so many times that you get good, you know, good enough to do it. Now, then it becomes just a complete mental game as far as how, you know, trying to do the same thing over and over again. You know, golf is different in the sense of most of the time you're just trying to do the same thing over again for 18 holes straight, you know, and that's a lot easier said than done because you'll have different thoughts, you'll have different lies, you have different situations. But in the grand scheme of it, you're really just trying to become as much of a machine as you possibly can. And a machine, you know, if a machine's trying to be perfect, it's not going to have a lot of different thoughts going into shots. You know, that's why, you know, so many golfers that you learn from, you know, the first thing they talk about is a routine. Well, routine's very important in the sense of trying to learn how to do something over and over again. And so I'd say your assessment's very, very good.
When you're in, you know, one of those rounds where it's going low, 62, 63, 64, do you even have a swing thought, or is it just let your body see the shot that your mind wants to hit and you just react and do it versus, you know, swing thoughts or thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people you always want to have one thought, you know, whatever that is. And I don't necessarily consider a thought within the setup or anything like that. You know, when I go to swing, you know, when I'm playing my best, I have one thought. When you're not playing as good, you know, your one thought, say, hits a big old cut to the right. Well, now all of a sudden if you need to hit a straight shot, now you're introducing, okay, here's my one thought, but then I also have to add in, you know, a flip or, you know, holding the club tight or whatever that next thought has to be. But now you've added two thoughts to create a straight shot. Now, if that shot's created, you know, okay, you're just going to have to go through the day with two thoughts, but, you know, you're really just wanting to play with one shot, you know, or one thought. My wife always calls me Houdini because I have a crazy little knack to get myself out of trouble. And when, you know, say I've got to hit a 40-yard cut around these trees or whatever that scenario is, well, when it's defined like that, it's really easy to do it in the sense of, okay, I have to hit this big old cut, I have to hit it low or whatever the scenario is, so I'm doing everything to do that. Where it gets difficult, I think, is when you're in the middle of the fairway, you know, without, you know, if there's no defined shot type there, you know, okay, what's your go-to shot? You know, how well are you assessing yourself through the day in the sense of, okay, well, I'm hitting about a 2-yard cut today. You know, how well are you noticing that? Or, you know, so I think shots, you know, out of trouble are very easy in the sense of it's very defined on what you have to do, where generally a lot of the shots from the middle of the fairway are the shots that I see guys have trouble with because there's nothing defined there.
No, that makes sense. And I when you were speaking, I think of my own game. And yeah, I mean, if you got to hit a low draw around a tree, it's pretty straightforward, right? If you're in trouble or you got to kind of hit that creative shot, but there's no variable of what needs to be done here. And yeah, if you have a kind of a simple, straightforward 9-iron that pins in an accessible situation, right? Like, then it becomes like, okay, do I cut it in there so it lands soft? Do I want to kind of draw spin in? I can see where all of a sudden that can get, which would seem more simple, could actually kind of get into your head, and then you don't fully commit, and oh God, I just blocked it out to the right because I wasn't fully committed. That's an interesting perspective you have, but I think you're onto something there. It makes sense. With your caddying, I know you caddied out at Whisper Rock for a long time. You're talking about playing against some of the best out there. There's a lot of tour players who are members out there. It's a really cool club. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but I've had some guys on the podcast who are members out there, and the vibe sounds great. A couple of buddies have played it. Did those guys who were on tour at that point in time, did you play with them a lot? Did you play in their money game? Did you kind of get to be around those guys to assess your game versus their game and try to get yourself better? Was that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't get to play against a ton of them back in the day when I was caddying out there. I've played with them a lot more over these last 6 years. 2 years ago, I had a little status, so I was at TPC every day, and that's where, you got to be out there. It just kind of is what it is. When you're caddying, people are going to look at you as a caddy. When you're out there in the golf outfit, people are going to look at you as a golfer. And, so for me, when I was caddying, I was caddying for all these really good players, and I just never was really impressed. Not to say anything, about any of them, because they're all very impressive, but I had a strong belief in what I could do. The best example is I caddied for Ches Reavie when he tied the course record and shot 61. And that day, when I left that golf course, I was like, oh man, I think I would have shot 60. And nothing against Ches, because he's an unbelievable golfer. He's actually one that my game's a little more geared towards. It's not like I'm a huge bomber. I can get it out there, 320 or so when I'm really going strong. But for the most part, Ches is just a machine. He makes everything, the easy stuff, look really easy. And that's, pretty much our job as a pro, is to make the easy shots look easier and make the hard shots look not too difficult, And so while I was caddying for him, we had an awesome day. He played awesome. But when I ended that day, I was like, man, I think I would have beat that, So I having the confidence within and seeing how these guys that are already, say top 50 in the world, it's like, oh, I think I can take this guy, So I'd say that's where it helped me, is seeing their games firsthand. I went to Lamar. I played with Chris Stroud and Sean Stefani, or they say Stephanie on TV, and then Davy Vanderwalt. Well, two of them are on the PGA right now, and Davy's on the web, or Korn Ferry. And, so the more you can be around good players, the better you can assess how close you are. And on top of that, I've got a strong confidence about what I can do with a golf ball. So to me, it showed me how close I really am.
What's a typical day look like for you when you're at home and you're getting ready for the upcoming season? And then what's a typical kind of day when you're out on tour, like for a practice round or something like that? How do you kind of spend your time?
Oh, man. At home's a little different. I don't make a ton of money. So, my week, I would say, is a little more typical, because if I'm not at the golf course, I'm watching the kids and letting my wife work. And so I'd say, a typical, let's say a Wednesday, where she doesn't have work and I get to go practice. Generally, nowadays is a little different than it used to be. It used to be I'd just get up, go to the golf course, be there till 2 or so, maybe even get to play, and then I might, get home 6:30 or 7, and had a good full day. Nowadays it's a little more wake up, go work out, and just to get your body going, and then I'll go out to the golf course. I'll work on what I need to. If there's anything that's on my mind, that'll be the prime focus. If nothing's really on my mind and it's more about creating tight, just more of a tight game, then always my biggest focus is I have a 4-foot drill that I go around the hole. I have to make 20 in a row. So that goes, the days that goes well, I'll get it done on the first try. When it goes bad, it might take you 15 tries. But the days that it goes bad and you have 15 tries, those are the days that as long as you keep fighting and finish it, you're going to get so much more out of that than that day that, you just draining them all, So I focus a lot on the short game, ball striking. At this point in time in my life, I've hit so many golf balls that my swings it just doesn't change. The strength of my swing is that's very repetitive. So honestly, I might show up some days, let's say in a tournament, and I might have a 2-yard cut. Some days I might have a 4-yard draw, but in the truest sense, I'm trying to feel my one thought, what's my one thought creating, and just being honest with that assessment. Sometimes you got to adjust during a round, but like I said, if you put me on the range and create a scenario, you've got to hit a 30-yard super high hook. I can do that. It's not like a swing deal. I'm generally adjusting most things in the setup and having everything done before I even go to hit the ball. So, I would say it just depends on if I was struggling, inside 80 yards, well, that's going to be something I'm going to punish that day. I'm going to work it out until I get my feels right. If I putt bad, if I was missing something right, okay, I'm going to get it on video. I'm going to see why, and I'm going to fix it, So it just depends really on whether you have something that you need to fix or whether you're just trying to maintain your game. And if you're trying to maintain, then you go back to those drills that got you to where you're at.
What's the game plan for 2020 for playing next year? Do you kind of have that mapped out, and where can we kind of see you playing?
I wish I did. It's life on the mini tour, man. I could be on the PGA in, 4 weeks or I'm on the mini tour. So I would say the plan for 2020 right now, I'm getting ready for stage 2 of Q school. The focus is just to get to finals and then get in the top 35 so that I have some exempt tournaments. And then if that doesn't go the way it's supposed to, then you just assess your backup plan. For me, it's I avoid the PGA Canada as the PGA Latin, not for any other reason other than I've got a wife and 2 kids, don't have much money behind me, so I have to focus on making some money. So I put a guy gave me some great advice about 7 years ago when I played PGA Canada, or it might have been 6, but he told me to do half money makers and half opportunity events. So I pretty much stuck to that. I'll have plenty of my money makers on my schedule, and by money makers, there's a comfort deal, and that's what I'm trying to learn right now for the next level, is trying to get comfortable out there. But when it comes to Dakota Tour or any mini tour event, really, there's a comfort there in the sense I know, 100% that I'm one of the best ones there. So I've just got to stay out of my own way, and get going. So, a Dakota Tour event I would consider a money maker versus Monday qualifier or any kind of qualifier. That's a little more on the money makers and opportunity. That's a little more under the opportunity events.
I completely understand where you're coming from. And I was going to bring up the Canadian Tour because I did when I was doing my research for the podcast, I read some stuff where it's like, it's hard to even break even out there, right? Like, and I think you kind of went through a thing like the expenses per month just to do that tour versus what you can make, that ROI is really difficult. So I don't know if you can kind of talk about, how tough of a challenge that is to play a full season on the Canadian Tour and how hard it is just to kind of keep it all square even.
Yeah, honestly, I could even go all the way to the Korn Ferry Tour and show how that's not very good money. I took T19 in Louisiana this year. T19 got me $6,600, but after you throw in flights, caddies aren't cheap. You throw in all these extra deals, and I basically made $1,200. And at the time I got into the very next event and on the Korn Ferry, I was already back to under zero. So it just shows you, so if Korn Ferry's bad money, well, PGA Canada, it's even worse. I had a buddy that finished 8th on that money list. This was 5 years ago. Played a great season, and he net lost $1,500 finishing 8th on the money list. And now he's an American. I from what I understand, if you're from Canada, you can probably, you're going to probably make out a little bit better. So he loses $1,500, but gets to go to final stage. So that's the perk of it. Didn't play great at final stage. Ended up with not very good status. So he ended up losing $1,500, got one start out of his status, and then he was out of golf, and so, and there's just a lot of stories in that way, for Canada. I mean, it cost me a ton. I went up there and, like I said, a comfort deal. It was new to me playing outside of the country. Things were a lot different. My routines were all weird. So that first year, it was kind of a learning curve. Well, when you all of a sudden lose $30,000, and you have no investors behind you, that can crush you, So I've had 2 times in my career that put me to the very final test, in the sense of, man, it might be time to hang it up. And fortunately, so far I kept going, and great things have always come from it, as long as you, view things right. Good things have always come. So when I'm talking to young guys, best examples, well, I better not use the name, but a guy that I've been competing against quite a bit in the last 2 years, great player. He asked me, while we were playing, he was like, hey man, I want to live my childhood dream. I want to get onto the PGA Tour. You're the best, player I've been around and played with. He was like, what do you think I should do, and what should I focus on? And my first question always with PGA Canada, or in talking that way, is, what kind of money do you have behind you? And he was like, well, I've got a billionaire behind me. I was like, all right, man, then to me it's easy. You go PGA Canada, because the guarantee is that you're going to play with great players. You're going to play against great players. You're going to play in a true tournament setup. It's roped off. It's really nice. They do a great job within that. I was like, but no matter what, you're not going to make that much money. Even number one guy, say he made $87,000, and I know your expenses are 30 plus. Well, he didn't net that much for the year, and that's the number one guy. And the number one guy, from what I've seen the last couple of years, is way ahead of number two. So, so I just tell the young guys, if it's not about the money, then go get it, whereas somebody like me, I just can't do it that way. Although I will say this, if I did go back, now that I've felt that comfort up a little bit, I would be strong and hard to beat up there.
It's just that's where the human story is just so interesting. I think to people who love golf, of the commitment it takes and how true, how hard it really is to get to the PGA Tour. And a lot of it just seems to be like at some level, there's so many good players out there that you just got to have the right timing and the right circumstances, like I said, the right backing, and then a lot of times once you get out there, they can stay out there, right? It's such an interesting voyage for most players to try to get out there and do it. I think that's the part that's just fascinating, of the grit and determination guys like you have to keep doing it, because the talent's there, so it's not a pipe dream, but just getting that right opportunity to get out there and do it, and then letting your talents kind of take over and never giving up on it. I just think I think that's the fascination of, we all wish we could have the talent to even consider doing it. Yet,
right.
For you to stay with it, and the other guys to stay with it, if you see them kind of going back and forth, or imagine going to Canada, finishing 8th on the money list and hardly making anything, like that's tough. Like that takes a lot of grit and determination. I think that's why people follow the stories and love watching competitors compete to try to get to the very top. It's just there's always an interesting backstory to it. So it's fascinating, man. Q School. So how many times have you done that gauntlet, and what is that experience like to play in with that kind of pressure, knowing what's at stake?
Yeah, man, Q School, that's its own little animal there. It's so awesome. But I don't know honestly how many times I've done it. I know I've been in second stage the last 4 or 5 years. So I've been getting through first stage. The toughest deal about Q School, I would say, is one, it starts right as kind of the main season's ending. So the most difficult part to me is, okay, if I have a huge tournament a month out, is learning how to, prep for that, because you don't want to all of a sudden be playing, which I've had this happen to me. I was playing great, so I was like, all right, I'll just keep playing in tournaments. So I play in tournaments, and all of a sudden I go win, and I'm just playing awesome. Well, and then all of a sudden, like that week before, or even 2 years ago, I won a tournament right prior to, or this was last year, I won a tournament right before Q School, going to second stage. And then all of a sudden I go to second stage, and the game kind of, just fell apart a little bit. And then, man, you want to talk about when things start getting tough out there, any bad thought you've ever had will come out strong, so you're in just a true dogfight within yourself on, hey, I'm good enough, whatever your go-to, inner, whatever your go-to kind of inner belief, thoughts are, man, you're in a battle trying to create that, hey, I'm good enough and all that. And so I would say the toughest part with Q School, beyond all the pressure, because, for somebody like me, it only comes down to Q School. If you're not going to do the PGA Canadas and the stuff like that, to try and build your status through the year, well, then it comes down to one tournament, and I know that there's 4 total stages, but each one's its own one. And so, I'd say the toughest part is learning how to peak your game, to make sure that your game's ready to go that exact week. 2 is, learning how to overcome any inner demons that you have right now or that can come up. I would say preparation, from what I've noticed, is my best way to combat. The more I feel prepared, the less questions I have about my game, the less thoughts will jump up on you early. But no matter what, you're going to have these thoughts, when you all of a sudden hit one OB on day 2 or day 3, it doesn't really matter, day 1, all of a sudden you're going to have that self-doubt try and kick in. And, how strong are you at fighting that self-doubt? You know, I've only gotten to final stage once. I've done it, and that year I was playing really good golf all throughout, and still didn't, you know, in for me from over the last 5 years. I mean, when I'm playing good, I'm winning. I mean, that is what it is. I mean, I've won tournaments not playing good before, but very rarely am I playing good and not finishing strong. So that year, you know, I ended up finishing 5th in second stage at Bear Creek, and I was playing really good. And so that just shows you how much mental anguish and stuff that you're going through, and you know, the battle against doubt versus belief. And you know, I still finished 5th, where in my opinion, when I'm playing good, I should be winning. So I would say, you know, that's pretty much Q School somewhat in a nutshell. There's just a lot of things that you just can't prepare for, or things that just don't really necessarily come up through the whole season, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're just put to the test because, you know, your life and career and what you want to do is on the line, and that's when doubt's going to try and fight hard.
Does Q School, like let's say you're in second stage, is it more or less, do you play aggressive, or do you just kind of, do you have to go low out there, or do you just kind of let everybody else kind of make mistakes and just play solid golf? Like, what's the mindset? Is it go low as you can, or is it sort of, let's find some fairways and greens, and if we can shoot 70, 69, 68 every day, we're fine? Or do you just, does it change from day to day? Like, how do you approach the, knowing that you've been through it, or what it takes to get through it? Is there a different approach in Q School, I guess I'm asking, versus a regular tournament?
Yeah, I would definitely say there's a different approach. One, because, you know, within mini tour golf, if you're not winning, you're not making much money. You know, it might be 20,000 to first, but it's 10 to second. Not that 10's bad, but there's a big difference there. So you're going to go do whatever it takes to win because it's worth it, right? So all of a sudden in Q School, now you're talking about, okay, the top 18 make it. Okay, so now it becomes a scenario, in my opinion, of, okay, who can, you know, either overcome their big mistake, because in 4 days, you know, you're generally going to have something go wrong. You know, I don't care who you are. You know, I had 1 year where I coasted through a first stage and I was just dead on my game, so it didn't really matter. And when you're on, it's you can get through Q School pretty easily. You know what I mean? When, in the sense of, you know, you're just going to keep riding it. You generally, if you're on, or at least for me, you know, I'm making some 20-foot putts. I'm making, you know, some of the longer ones to where I don't have to go right at it. Sometimes your iron game's so on that you can just knock the flag stick out of the ground every time. You know, for me, the year I made it, my focus, especially second stage, I hadn't gotten by second stage. My focus was, all right, no doubles this week. All right, so if your whole game plan is to go into a week without doubles, well, you're generally probably not going to take too much risk unless there's not much risk there. You know, so I would say, you know, for the most part, you're playing a very protective golf, but at the same time, you know, if you all of a sudden hit a great shot like you're trying to 30 feet and you drain that putt, you know, you did everything you wanted to do, you know, you happen to drain the putt, so now you're getting paid off on just smart, conservative golf. And I think Q School, for the most part, is conservative golf unless you can get yourself loose from the field and the pack. You know, if like Bear Creek, you know, generally the guy that's winning is probably anywhere from 12 to 18 under, you know, where that top 18 mark is going to be, you know, anywhere from 5 to 6 under par for the week, maybe even 7. But so if you can get loose, you know, all of a sudden be 10 under through 2 days, then at that point in time, I would switch a little more to attack mode, because you've got a little you've got a little leeway there if you have to, but you're trying to just get away from the pack, just start running. And so I would say to start the week, everybody's probably generally pretty conservative, trying to take any big numbers out of play. Any, like I said, if you're battling internally doubt versus belief, then you don't want to put yourself in situations where doubt's going to be, coming on really strong. So I'd say you start the week conservative. If you can get break loose from the pack, then you just start running and run hard, man. But I'd say that's about it, as far as how I approach it.
And then, back to the mini tour events and the Dakotas and developmental tour stuff. What do you think potentially is some of the biggest misconceptions golf fans may have about those events? Is there any conversations you had with people that you're like, no, it's actually not like this, it's more like that? Is there anything that people may not or generally don't fully understand about those developmental tours?
I don't know. I've never really heard anything. I've had a lot of, I've gotten a lot of really, good feelings. Guys will play with me and they're just like, like I always tell, I started with this elite tour and we were trying to get, to me, there's such big strength in pro-ams at our level in mini tours because, one, these guys get to play with some players that they're like, oh, they're just at the mini tour level. And then all of a sudden they get the day done and I shot 10 under and they're like, holy cow, this guy's really, really good. So then they'll be like, oh man, Rory must be just absolute freak out there. It's like, hey man, if I was to play Rory, I hate to tell you, I do a lot better than anybody would expect, and I know that we're not too far off. We're obviously either dealing with, our own internals or, maybe, somebody like me, financially, I've got to make a lot of decisions that don't give me those opportunity events. And then there's a big deal in comfort and learning how to deal with, bigger tournaments, like I told a guy the other day, I was like, listen, Jordan Spieth, by the time he was, 17, 18 years old, he had played in all these U.S. AMs, all these U.S. Junior AMs, all these huge events. I was like, I could argue that at my age, at 37, he had played, by the time he was 18, he had played in more bigger events than I have even to right now. Now, they might not have been professional events, but, the more you can be around those roped events and things like that, man, you've got to learn how to be comfortable in those situations. And not everything's going to always be comfort, but there's, there's that, okay, I'm learning how to deal with this situation, and so, like, I go do what I expect to do and get some status and actually get some starts, guaranteed starts on the Korn Ferry. I'm just going to keep getting stronger and better. This last year I made 2 of 3 cuts, and, if I get into 10 events this next year, I expect to, fully go 9 of 10 or something, maybe even 10 or 10, possibly with a win, and so I just think the more you can get those opportunities, one, you got to have the game and the belief, and then it just comes down to how many opportunities can you get, and in my opinion, these guys that are at the top of the top, the Tiger Woods, all the greats, they played in so many huge events at the amateur level that they were able to adapt really fast. Unfortunately, I didn't play in all those big events when I was younger, and so I'm trying to adapt as fast as I can. But, the only difference I would say is I'm 37 with a family, having to adapt to these situations. And like I said, you're battling internally, and, if your internal's like, oh man, if you don't make this cut, man, you're done with golf, And that thought might pop in your head. Well, you got to have some go-to internal beliefs to combat that, So I think at times guys that are just getting their opportunities are battling something that the other guys had to battle when they were younger, And so I just think I would say the biggest deal that people would learn is, man, come out and play with me, and I promise you'll be shocked at what I can do with a golf ball.
That's what I figured the answer had to be. I didn't want to say anything, but it has to be like, oh, well, you're playing the Dakota, so you're like a 0 handicap good, right? And like when people actually see it up close, they're probably like, okay, that's what a 63 looks like from 7,200 yards. Okay, it's right. Like I don't think people. I mean, I'm around golf my whole life. I know how good the players are on that. I don't know if the average golf fan realizes, even take a 0 handicap. Go play the same tee box you did under tournament pressure, under tournament conditions for 3 days, and go shoot 15 or 14 or 20 under par.
Yeah.
Right? It's still a stupid good level of golf, and it's
like I was telling you the other day. I was playing out at doesn't matter, the Fort McDowell casino course, and I just went out there by myself, and I get paired with these two guys, and so I played the very back. They didn't even have a tee there, and so these guys were kind of talking it up, kind of laughing, and we get out to the fairway, and they're like, "So what do you do?" I was like, "Oh, I'm a professional golfer." They're like, "Oh, so you're pretty good," and I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty good." And all of a sudden, the guy was talking. He was like, "So what's your handicap?" I was like, "Oh, I really don't know what my handicap would be. I haven't done a handicap in forever." And he was like, "So are you like scratch?" I was like, "Well, here's the best way I can put it. I played a scratch golfer 2 weeks ago at TPC, and I beat him by 18." And so then all of a sudden they were laughing, and hey, I put a little extra pressure on myself, but that's fine. And I ended up shooting 62 that day, and they were like, okay, this guy can, really play, because, it's when you talk some trash, you're putting yourself out there. You're putting more pressure on yourself. Pride always comes before the fall. So, if you put that pressure on yourself, you better be willing to back it up. And fortunately that day I was ready to back it up. So, I think a lot of guys that might be that 2-3 handicap that think they're pretty close to some of these mini tour golfers would just absolutely, it'd blow their mind how fast they get beat.
Absolutely.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, it's a different game. It's right, like I'm like say a 1 or 2 handicap if I'm practicing and playing. Your game versus my game is literally like we're playing 2 different games. It's right. Yeah. It's just that there's that big of a difference between a +6 or +7 handicap versus a 1 or a 2. It's night and day.
There's a big difference there. Just one, we're going to be there every day. If we play 10 rounds, that's when you really see it or feel it. Depending on if you're playing for money. But that one round, you might shoot 74, and I might have a tough day and, shoot 69. And you're like, oh, I'm really close. We go out that next day and I'm on my game. I might shoot 61. Well, if we're competing, that's probably going to mess with you watching those birdie putts fall in every hole, and you're probably going to shoot about 78, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, man,
Well, you can just tell the way the ball's hit and compressed, and right, there's just a difference. There's just you guys hit it like pros, and we hit it like good amateurs, right? And there's just there's a difference in that. So it's interesting. That was your biggest misconception answer, which I was leaning towards like that's got to be it. I'm not realizing the level of play that's out there. To the mini tours, I thought about this question: like, what's the most crazy out of the way town in Canada or the States or wherever that you've played a mini tour event in? Like, with crazy city away from everybody else. Like, what's the most? Does any of them come to mind where it's like, how the hell are we having an event out here?
Yeah, I got a great one for you. And this is for anybody that's ever run through there. In Parker, Arizona, which Parker's right on the border on the Colorado River, so it's right on the border of Arizona and California. There is this little tiny tournament. I mean, they still get like 100 pros, but this course is like something off of Golden Tee, man. It is unbelievable. You'll have like 5 par 4s that you can drive with a hybrid, but everything around it is like some big canyon. So if you miss, you're making double. If you hit that hybrid good, you could make eagle. You know, and this course is just unbelievable. It's such a hidden gem. It's called Enlil Canyon, and holy cow, I'd recommend it to anybody. It's such a fun, crazy golf course.
So imagine like somebody goes stupid low and then somebody just shoots an 80, right? Like it's got to be like that edge of a type of golf course where you can make a double or an eagle about in every other hole.
Oh, it's crazy. So my first year there, I went to this tournament. Buddy Brian Dillon, he told me about it. I had never even heard about it, so I go there, and you know, we're having some fun. And the day 2, I'm finishing in the dark. Like I'm like, man, I'm getting this round done. I'm hitting into the group ahead of us, and just to get this round done, you know, the rounds take forever in this tournament, especially the first 2 days. And then all of a sudden, you know, I come in, I've got a 2-shot lead. Well, we all start having fun and partying it up, you know, because it's just a fun little deal. I thought. And next thing you know, it's super late. It was like 3:00. I was like, so when do we tee off the next day? You know, I'm used to the pros going off in the afternoon. They're like, oh, you're at 8:50. I'm like, 8:50? So I show up the next day. You know, I had no clue about this. I'm super hungover. And all of a sudden I go out and just basically unconscious, I birdie 10 of the first 11 holes. Don't even, the only hole I didn't birdie was probably the easiest hole. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm winning the thing by 12.
This question came from Ryan over at the Monday Q. He wanted me to ask you, is there a rivalry with Tim Ailes, and how good of a player is he, and how much fun have you guys had going head-to-head at some of these tournaments?
Oh, Tim Ailes is one of the greatest guys on the planet, man. I love him to death. There's always going to be a rivalry. Tim Ailes was so unbeatable before I had even won. To me, that guy was unbelievable. It's sad that he never or hasn't made it to the top of the world. But I would say, and I don't know how he'd assess this, but I always kind of told people, he was the king of the Dakota Tour, and I had to unseat him, and that was a focus of mine. So the first year that I had my very first win was against Tim Ailes, and I went out and got it. I shot I think 21 under par in 3 days, but we had to go to one playoff hole, and I birdied it. And so my very first win was against Tim Ailes, and that was big time for me. I mean, whoever the top guy is on the charts, man, that's who they're coming for. Even Brady Calkins has unseated me over the last couple of years, and that's tough, So I wouldn't say there was definitely a bigger rivalry, 4 or 5 years ago, because it was Tim Ailes was the top guy, and then I won 3 tournaments that year and was the Dakota Tour Player of the Year, which was my goal. And so I'd say I unseated him at that point in time. And then Tim Koenig came through. He had a good year and beat me that year, and then Doug Quinnos. And then I took the title back. And then the last 2 years has been Brady Calkins. And no matter who it is at the top, like this year, Brady smoked me in money, smoked me in points. But I was also jumping back and forth to a lot of opportunity events. So, that wasn't my total focus, but it was my focus in the sense of with Brady is when we go head, he beat me head to head last year. So anytime we were head to head, which I counted 3 times this year, I got him every time because it was a focus of mine, and so, I would say right now my bigger rivalry would be Brady Calkins, but, 5 or 6 years ago, yes, it was Tim Ailes. Tim Ailes was the king, man. He was awesome. He's still awesome.
So to get that first win against, a legend like that, were you surprised that you handled it that well? Was it fun? Was it scary as shit? Like, what was the mindset going in? Like, okay, I got to beat this guy. And then to pull it off, like, has to be one hell of a feeling. But what were your emotions kind of coming down to the end and knowing you guys were close? What was that sort of scenario like from a mental aspect? Obviously, you're hitting the ball good. You're shooting 21 under par. But what was going through your noggin on that one?
Yeah, honestly, I remember like yesterday. It was yesterday. It was the first time I came up with this thought that I told myself no scores too low. And I just, before any putt, anything I did, I just told myself no scores too low. And it kept it to where, because at that time I hadn't won and the numbers that the guys were shooting looked crazy. And, honestly, there are times when we shoot crazy numbers. And, so if you're starting the week and like mine out this year, all of a sudden you're starting the week and you're like, okay, I need to shoot 28 under par, 4 days. Okay. That number just is just crazy, and then all of a sudden, you just go through your routine, you stay in the moment, and all of a sudden you do it. And, that's what I did in mine. So with Tim, that tournament, I just kept telling myself no scores too low. And it kept me charging ahead. It never allowed me, I'm 600 par. I need to protect this. It just never allowed me to get into a protection mode. And so even, nowadays, I don't use necessarily that saying, that was just kind of specific to that tournament or I should say just to that year. But, sayings like that, whatever it is, you're trying to bring out the best within yourself. And so you've got to do something that, you can lie to yourself, which I tell guys all the time. I was like, listen, if you don't necessarily think you're good enough, you tell yourself you're good enough. You know what I mean? You lie to yourself until it becomes true. And, that's the cool thing about golf. If I shoot 58 as a nation, I shot 58. Okay, you might not want to go around telling people you shot 58 because you didn't actually do it, but internally you did it. So this is just a mental game. And so for me to win that week, it came down to me telling myself before every shot, no scores too low. And that's what it was, and, I have a rheumatoid arthritis. So, I used to have a 94 mile an hour driver head speed, and which is, nothing really. And, so for years, those Dakota Tours, man, I had the best short game out there. And then I got on that Humera, now I'm on Enlil, and man, I went instantly from 94 mile an hour driver head speed to now I'm right at about 115. And so that year, all of a sudden I came out with such confidence and such joy, just to be able to move. My blood inflammation level used to be at 52.7. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't lay on my stomach, couldn't move my neck to look at both sides of the mirrors, but I competed as hard as I could. And then all of a sudden you give somebody the gift of being able to move. And man, I just had such a good feeling. And that's how that season, and that's how I kind of became to be who I was. I fought really hard while I was, just couldn't move. And I had a short game that was second to none. And then all of a sudden you give me the ability to hit it 300 plus, man. And I mean, I was very hard to beat. that very first year, because I just was so thankful and grateful to be able to sleep at night. Prior to that, I was taking 24 ibuprofen a day just to compete. So, there's a lot that went into that, but I would say that it all came down to the saying, no score's too low.
And what a great story to get the first one too, right? Like that's what you'd want. You'd want to take out the best, right? Like that's just
you want to take out the best. Exactly.
Yeah. Like that's just fantastic way to get like the pro career started with a victory. So let's say you had an injury that you knew you could not play at the top of your game anymore, and it's over. God forbid this happens. Let's hope it doesn't. But if it did, looking back at your pro career, if it had to not go on, how satisfied would you be at this point of what you accomplished?
Oh, that's such a good question. I've even kind of thought about this, because at my age, I've been, if you, I'm not here to try and, stay on the mini tours forever, even though I've really enjoyed this life. You just don't make a ton of money, and there's a lot of stress on you through the year. I would say, would I be satisfied? I would say no. I don't think I'd be satisfied. The toughest part, and because I even thought about stopping my career this last year, prior to this last year, fortunately for the first time in 10 years, I had some guys. I called them up, and this is the first year I've got some investors. I'm still the biggest investor, but I had some guys help me out a little bit, and it kept me going, and I'm super thankful for them for doing that. But the thing I kept telling them is like, guys, I would totally be done. The problem is I just keep getting a little bit better. And so I would say if something happened to where it took me out of golf, I guess I would say yes, I'd be satisfied with what I've done. But the part that no, I'm not satisfied with is I've got a ton of talent and I've got a ton of game, and it would be sad to not at least win a PGA Tour event, let alone my real goal to win a major. It'd be sad that I didn't use my talent to its fullest extreme, and so that's what I would probably say.
Got a couple quick hitters here for you, and then we'll get you back to the golf course. You can't say yourself on this one. Most talented player you've ever had a chance to see up close and play with, out of all the years of being around all the guys, just where the talent, that might be the best score, but Jesus, what natural talent.
John Rahm's the only one that has ever just absolutely impressed the crap out of me.
What did he do that just, even a professional at your level that you saw that you went, holy shit, this guy is?
Yeah, I was caddying for him at Wrist Rock, and man, that guy could hit a 400 as good as I hit a pitching wedge. I mean, it was going to 3 feet every hole. He was laser with his driver. I would say the only thing I wasn't impressed with was his wedges, but man, I mean, ball striking, when you're talking like 600, 500, 400, all the way to driver, man, I mean, it was laser. I was super impressed with that guy.
Best golf shot you ever hit under pressure?
Oh, gosh, I've hit so many good ones. Man, that's a good one. I would say the one that jumps into my mind first off was when I was 15 years old and I won my very first junior tournament. I hit this 8-iron out of this bunker to this left pin with the cut to about 4 feet to win the tournament. I'll just go there.
It's a great one. Get the career started the right way at 15, right?
Yeah.
Favorite golf course architecturally you've ever gotten to play?
I'd say Oakmont or Emerald Canyon in Parker, Arizona.
Two pretty good choices there, especially on the Oakmont side. That had to be.
Yeah.
What were those
Oakmont
greens like?
Awesome.
Were they just
oh my gosh,
scary?
They were so fast. They shoot the 30 yards before the green was running at 13. The greens were running 14 and a half. So even if you're just short of the green, good luck getting the speed on the fairway. It was incredible. It was so fast.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'd be Texas wedging everything, obviously.
Yeah.
Just get the putter
from
and hit it
80
up there.
yards, I thought about doing it.
I spend a lot of time out in Sand Hill area, Nebraska, and the Dakotas and stuff. We have family and stuff out there and play golf out in the Sand Hill area. So I'm in that area of the Dakotas tour. So what is your favorite city to kind of visit, stay at, hang out in that Dakotas tour sort of realm of where those golf tournaments are played?
Sioux Falls is an awesome city, I think. I'm a little partial. My wife's family's from there. So I spend my most time out there. I would say Sioux Falls, and then if we wanted to take that out, which is a bummer that we lost it, but Rapid City in South Dakota is pretty awesome too. The Black Hills.
Absolutely, yeah. We did a family trip out to Rapid City and went to Deadwood and the state parks and stuff out there. I thought the town was awesome. Like the vibe downtown, it's gorgeous. It's what a cool area that would be to live in. We absolutely loved it. And I also agree with you on Sioux Falls. My wife has a bunch of family out there. I'm like, what a great city to visit. It's big enough but small enough. Some good golf courses, like super nice people. I absolutely love going to that place. Yeah,
that's the thing I love about the North, man. To me, the people are just so nice. It's just so nice. They're very down to earth, which is just very refreshing, I think.
Yeah, just good Midwest people, right? They're I know same thing. Like from playing golf out in Sand Hill region of Nebraska, like it's ranch land. It feels like you're way out west. But what on top of the golf, fell in love with the people. Like they are the kindest, nicest, most down to earth people you'll ever meet in your life. Like the vibe out there is just calm, cool, and collected. Like I love the whole tranquility of that sort of area, and life is just maybe a little slower than even outside of Chicago. Like they just sort of seem to get it. So it's a great area to visit. Really is. Yeah. Well, Andre, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the time today.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to be watching, Q School coming up, and I think there's a lot of people who love the story and love the grind up and love that the talent's there. Like it's such a great story, and I wanted to tell it. And like I said, I appreciate you taking the time today, and we'll definitely be pulling for you and watching you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, I did too, man. This is my first podcast, and I really appreciate it, man. This is awesome, and we appreciate you building awareness for us.
No worries. Play well.
All right, thank you.